I still don't know why I went camping alone that weekend. Maybe I just needed a break. Maybe I needed silence. But the silence I found in those woods wasn't peaceful. It felt like something was holding its breath, watching me long before I ever noticed. I arrived at the national forest around late afternoon. The place wasn't remote, but it wasn't popular either. Just miles of old pines, empty trails, and an occasional broken sign pointing toward forgotten campsites. I chose a small clearing near a narrow river. It looked calm, open, and safe. At the time, I couldn't imagine how far that was from the truth. I set up my tent, made a small fire, and cooked dinner. The forest was quiet. Too quiet. Even the birds felt distant. But I told myself it was just normal wilderness energy settling for the evening. Around sunset, I heard the first strange sound. Not an animal, not footsteps, just breathing. Slow, heavy breathing coming from somewhere behind the tree line. I froze, listening. It faded after a few seconds, so I convinced myself it was probably a deer or a bear far away. Still, something didn't feel right. My instinct whispered, "Stay alert." Night came fast. I zipped myself inside my tent, trying to fall asleep, but I kept hearing small cracks, twigs snapping, soft rustling, something brushing the outside of my tent. Every time I sat up and listened, the sound stopped instantly, like someone knew I was awake. Around midnight, the real nightmare began. I woke up to the unmistakable sound of footsteps circling my tent. Slow, deliberate, careful footsteps. Human footsteps. My heart started pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. Whoever was outside was trying to move quietly, but not quietly enough. I didn't dare turn on my flashlight. I didn't make a sound. I just sat there, holding my breath, listening as the steps circled once, twice, and then stopped right at the entrance of the tent. Whoever it was crouched down. I saw the shadow through the thin fabric, human, tall, and completely still. Then I heard the sound that made my blood run cold. A whisper, not words, just a low, humming whisper, like someone was trying to test if I was awake. I didn't move. I didn't blink. I didn't breathe. After almost a full minute, the shadow slowly stood up and walked away. But I didn't feel relief, not even a little, because I didn't hear footsteps leaving. The person just melted into the forest. I grabbed the small pocket knife I always keep with me and sat there, shaking, until dawn. When the sky finally started to lighten, I unzipped the tent and stepped out. My stomach dropped. There were fresh shoe prints all around my campsite, deep ones, circling the tent exactly where I heard them, and they weren't from hiking boots. They looked like old, worn-out work boots. Heavy ones. Someone had been there. I packed my things as fast as I could, but as I started taking down the tent, I noticed something else. Right on the side of the tent, near where the shadow had crouched, were long streaks, like someone had dragged their fingers slowly across the fabric. 5 distinct lines. Not deep enough to cut through, but deep enough to leave marks. I decided right then, I wasn't staying a second longer. As I hiked back toward my car, I kept hearing branches snapping behind me. Every time I stopped, the sound stopped too. At one point, I called out, "Hello? Anyone out there?" Silence. About halfway back, I reached a small wooden bridge over the river. I paused to catch my breath. And that's when I saw it. Across the bridge, half hidden behind a tree, was a man. Tall, wearing dark, dirty clothes, and old brown work boots. The exact type that made the prints around my tent. He wasn't walking, wasn't approaching. He was just standing there, staring directly at me like he had been waiting for me to look up. I froze. My body refused to move. The man tilted his head slightly like he was curious. There was nothing animalistic or frantic about him. He looked calm. Too calm. Like he already knew I wasn't going to do anything stupid. I slowly backed away without turning around. The entire time, he didn't move. Not a single step. But I felt his eyes follow me. When I was far enough that I couldn't see him anymore, I ran. I didn't stop until I reached my car. I locked the doors, started the engine, and drove non-stop until I reached the nearest town. When I told a ranger what happened, he didn't act surprised, not even a little. He just sighed and said, "We've had reports of a guy wandering the forest. Doesn't talk to anyone. Doesn't seem dangerous. But he doesn't like people camping alone." That chilled me more than anything else. He didn't like people camping alone. To this day, I still wonder how long he watched me before he finally walked up to my tent. How long he stood in the dark between the trees while I cooked dinner. How long he listened to me breathe while I tried to sleep. And worst of all, what would have happened if I'd unzipped the tent when he crouched outside?